Hello, welcome to Zen Mode HQ. I appreciate all of you that participated in the survey. The Upanishads was a close second place, so I decided to read through it tonight and get it uploaded for you all. Please be sure to like and subscribe so this bumps up in the keywords for the YouTube algorithm. Thanks so much. Isa Upanishad. Peace chant. That invisible absolute is whole. Whole is this, the visible phenomenal. From the invisible whole comes forth the visible whole. Though the visible whole has come out from that invisible whole, yet the whole remains unaltered. Peace, peace, peace. The indefinite term that is used in the Upanishads to designate the invisible absolute. Because no word or name can fully define it, a finite object, like a table or a tree, can be defined, but God, who is infinite and unbounded, cannot be expressed by finite language. Therefore, the rishis, or divine seers, desirous not to limit the unlimited, chose the indefinite term that to designate the absolute. In the light of true wisdom, the phenomenal and the absolute are inseparable. All existence is in the absolute, and whatever exists must exist in it. Hence, all manifestation is merely a modification of the one supreme whole, and neither increases nor diminishes it. The whole therefore remains unaltered. All this whatsoever exists in the universe should be covered by the Lord. Having renounced the unreal, enjoy the real. Do not covet the wealth of any man. We cover all things with the Lord by perceiving the divine presence everywhere. When the consciousness is firmly fixed in God, the conception of diversity naturally drops away, because the one cosmic existence shines through all things. As we gain the light of wisdom, we cease to cling to the unrealities of this world, and we find all our joy in the realm of reality. The word enjoy is also interpreted by the great commentator Sankarkara as protect, because knowledge of our true self is the greatest protector and sustainer. If we do not have this knowledge, we cannot be happy, because nothing on this external plane of phenomena is permanent or dependable. He who is rich in the knowledge of the self does not covet external power or possession. If one should desire to live in this world 100 years, one should live by performing karma. Thus thou mayest live. There is no other way. By doing this righteous deeds, the fruits of thy actions will not defile thee. If a man still clings to long life and earthly possessions, and is therefore unable to follow the path of self-knowledge as prescribed in the first mantram, Then he may follow the path of right action, karma, nishta. Karma here means actions performed without selfish motive, for the sake of the Lord alone. When a man performs actions clinging blindly to his lower desires, then his actions bind him to the plane of ignorance or the plane of birth and death. But when the same actions are performed with surrender to God, they purify and liberate him. After leaving their bodies, they who have killed the self go to the worlds of the asuras, covered with blinding ignorance. The idea of rising to bright regions as a reward for well-doers and of all falling into the realms of darkness as a punishment for evildoers is common to all great religions. But Vedanta claims that this condition of heaven and hell is only temporary, because our actions, being finite, can produce only a finite result. What does it mean to kill the self? How can the immortal soul ever be destroyed? It cannot be destroyed. It can only be obscured. Those who hold themselves under the sway of ignorance, who serve the flesh and neglect the Atman, or the real self, are not able to perceive the effulgent and indestructible nature of their soul. Hence, they fall into the realm where the soul light does not shine. Here, the Upanishad shows that the only hell is absence of knowledge. As long as man is overpowered by the darkness of ignorance, he is the slave of nature and must accept whatever comes as the fruit of his thoughts and deeds. When he strays into the path of unreality, the sages declare that he destroys himself, because he who clings to the perishable body and regards it as his true self must experience death many times. That one, though motionless, is swifter than the mind. The senses can never overtake it, for it ever goes before. Though immovable, it travels faster than those who run. By it all the pervading air sustains all living beings. This verse explains the character of the Atman or self. A finite object can be taken from one place and put in another, but it can only occupy one space at a time. The Atman, however, is present everywhere. Hence, though one may run with the greatest swiftness to overtake it, it already is there before him. Even the all-pervading air must be supported by this self, since it is infinite, and as nothing can live without breathing air, all living things must draw their life from the cosmic self. It moves and it moves not. It is far and also it is near. It is within and also it is without. It is near to those who have the power to understand it, for it dwells in the heart of everyone, but it seems far to those whose mind is covered by the clouds of sensuality and self-delusion. It is within, because it is the innermost soul of all creatures. And it is without, as the essence of the whole external universe, in filling it like all-pervading ether. He who sees all beings in the self, and the self in all beings, he never turns away from it. He who perceives all beings as the self, for him how can there be delusions or grief when he sees this oneness everywhere? He who perceives the self everywhere never shrinks from anything, because through his higher consciousness he feels united with all life. When a man sees God in all beings, and all beings in God, and also God dwelling in his own soul, how can he hate any living thing? Grief and delusion rests upon a belief in diversity, which leads to the competition and all forms of selfishness. With the realization of oneness, the sense of diversity vanishes and the cause of misery is removed. He, the self, is all encircling, resplendent, bodiless, spotless, without sinews, pure, untouched by sin, all-seeing, all-knowing, transcendent, self-existent. He has disposed all things duly for eternal years. They enter into blind darkness who worship ignorance and delusion. They fall, as it were, into greater darkness who worship knowledge. By knowledge, one end is attained, by ignorance another. Thus, we have heard from the wise men who taught this. He who knows at the same time both ignorance and knowledge crosses over death by ignorance and attains immortality through knowledge. Those who follow or worship the path of selfishness and pleasure without knowing anything higher necessarily fall into darkness. But those who worship or cherish knowledge for mere intellectual pride and satisfaction will fall into greater darkness, because the opportunity which they misuse is even greater. In the subsequent verses, knowledge and wisdom are used in something which could be considered the same as faith and works in the Christian tradition. Neither alone can lead to the ultimate goal, but when taken together, they carry one to the highest ideal. They fall into blind darkness who worship the unmanifested, and they fall into greater darkness who worship the manifested. By the worship of the unmanifested, one end is attained. By the worship of the manifested, another. Thus we have heard from the wise men who taught us this. He who knows at the same time both the unmanifested and the destructible or manifested, he crosses over death through knowledge of the destructible and attains immortality through knowledge of the first cause. The first cause being the unmanifested. The face of truth is hidden by a golden disk. O effulgent being, uncover thy face, that I, the worshipper of truth, may behold thee. O Pushan, O sun, sole traveler of the heavens, controller of all, son of Prayapati, withdraw thy rays and gather up thy burning effulgence. Now, through thy grace, I behold thy blessed and glorious form. The effulgent being who dwells within thee, I am he. May my life breath go to all-pervading and immortal prana, and let this body be burned to ashes. O mind, remember thy deeds. O mind, remember thy deeds. Remember. Seek not fleeting results as the reward of thy actions, O mind. Strive only for the imperishable. O Agni, bright being, lead us to blessedness by the good path. O Lord, thou knowest all our deeds. Remove all evil and delusion from us. To thee we offer our prostrations and supplications again and again. Here ends the Isavasya Upanishad. Katha Upanishad. Peace, peace, peace. Vahaya Srava, being desirous of heavenly rewards, made a gift of all that he possessed. He had a son by the name of Nachiketus. When the offerings were being distributed, faith entered the heart of his son, who, though young, yet resected. These cows have drunk water, eaten grass, and given milk for the last time, and their senses have lost all vigor. He who gives these undoubtedly goes to joyless realms. He said to his father, Dear father, to whom wilt thou give me? He said it a second time, then a third time. The father replied, I shall give thee unto death. Nachiketus thought, Among many of my father's pupils I stand first. Among many others I stand in the middle. What will be accomplished for my father by going this day to Yama? Look back to those who lived before, and look to those who live now. Like grain, the mortal decays, and like grain, again springs up, reborn. Like fire, a Brahmana guest enters into houses. That fire is quenched by an offering. Therefore, Vaivaswata, bring water. The foolish man, in whose house a Brahmana guest remains without food, all his hopes and expectations, all the merit gained by his association with the holy, by his good words and deeds, all his sons and cattle are destroyed. Nachiketus said, May Gautama, my father, be free from anxious thought about me. May he lose all anger towards me, and be pacified in heart. May he know and welcome me when I am sent back by thee. This, O death, is the first of the 3 boons I chose. Yama replied, Through my will, Aruni will know thee, and be again towards thee as before. He will sleep in peace at night. He will be free from wrath when he sees thee released from the mouth of death. Nachiketus said, In the realm of heaven there is no fear. Thou, death, art not there, nor is there fear of old age. Having crossed beyond both hunger and thirst, and being above grief, rejoice in heaven. Thou knowest, O death, the fire sacrifice that leads to heaven. Tell this to me, who am full of faith and yearning. They who live in the realm of heaven enjoy freedom from death. This I beg as my second boon. Yama replied, I know well that fire which leads to the realm of heaven. I shall tell it to thee. Listen to me. Know, O Nachiketus, that this is the means of attaining endless worlds and their support. It is hidden in the heart of all beings. Yama then told him that fire sacrifice, the beginning of all the worlds, what bricks, how many and how laid for the altar. Nachiketus replied, all is it was told to him. Then Death, being pleased with him, said, the great soured Yama, being well pleased, said to him, Nachiketus, I give thee now another boon. This fire, sacrifice, shall be named after thee. Take also this garland of many colors. He who performs this Nachiketa fire sacrifice 3 times, being united with the 3, the mother, the father, and the teacher, and who fulfills the 3-fold duty, study the Vedas, sacrifice, and give alms, crosses over birth and death. Knowing this worshipful shining fire born of Brahman and realizing him, he attains eternal peace. He who knows the 3-fold Nachiketa fire and performs the fire sacrifice with 3-fold knowledge, having cast off the fetters of death and being beyond grief, he rejoices in the realm of heaven. O Nachiketus, this is thy fire that leads to heaven, which thou hast chosen as thy second boon. People will call this fire after thy name. Ask for thy 3rd boon. Nachiketus said, there is this doubt regarding what becomes of a man after death. Some say he exists. Others say that he does not exist. This knowledge I desire, being instructed by thee. Of the boons, this is the 3rd boon. Death replied, even the Devas, the bright ones, of old doubted regarding this. It is not easy to know. Subtle indeed is this subject. O Nachiketus, choose another boon. Do not press me on this. Ask not this boon from me. Nachiketus said, O Death, thou sayest that even the Devas had doubts about this, and that it is not easy to know. Another teacher like unto thee is not to be found. Therefore, no other boon can be equal to this one. Death said, ask for sons and grandsons who shall live 100 years. Many cattle, ask for gold, elephants, and horses. Ask for land, vast, ask for a long life for thyself, as many autumns of life as thou desirest. If thou thinkest of any other boon equal to this, ask for wealth and long life. Ask to be the ruler of the whole world. O Nachiketus, I shall make thee enjoyer of all desire. Whatsoever objects of desire are difficult to obtain in the realm of mortals, ask them all as thou desirest. These lovely maidens, with their chariots and musical instruments, such as not obtainable by mortals, be served by these whom I give to thee. Do not ask regarding what happens after death. Nachiketus said, O death, these are fleeting. They weaken the vigor of all the senses in man. Even the longest life is short. Keep thou thy chariots, keep thy dance and music. Man can never be satisfied by wealth. Shall we possess wealth when we see death? Shall we continue to live as long as thou rulest? Therefore, that boon alone is chosen by me. What man dwelling on the decaying mortal plane, having approached the decaying immortal one, and having reflected upon the nature of enjoyment through beauty and sense pleasure, would delight in a long life? O death, that regarding which there is doubt of the great hereafter, please tell us. Nachiketus asks for no other boon than that which penetrates this most secret, hidden boon. Death said, the good is one thing, and the pleasant another. These two, having different ends, bind a man. It is well with him who chooses the good. He who chooses the pleasant misses the true end. The good and the pleasant approach man. The wise examines both and discriminates between them. The wise will prefer the good over the pleasant, but the fool will choose the pleasant through love of bodily pleasure. O Nachiketus, after wise reflection, thou hast renounced the pleasant and all pleasing forms. Thou hast not accepted the garland of great value for which many mortals will perish. Wide apart are these two, ignorance and what is known as wisdom, leading in opposite directions. I believe, Nachiketus, to be one who longs for wisdom, since many tempting objects have not turned thee aside. Fools dwelling in ignorance, yet imagining themselves wise and learned, go round and round in crooked ways, like the blind leading the blind. The hereafter never rises before the thoughtless child, the thoughtless child being ignorance, deluded by the glamour of wealth. This world alone is, there is none other. Thinking thus, he falls under my sway again and again. There are many in the world who will puff up with intellectual conceit and believe that they are capable of guiding others. But although they may possess a certain amount of worldly knowledge, they are devoid of deeper understanding. Therefore, all that they say merely increases doubt and confusion in the minds of those who hear them. Hence, they are the blind man leading the blind. He about whom many are not even able to hear, whom many cannot comprehend even after hearing, wonderful is the teacher. Wonderful is he who can receive when taught by an able teacher. When taught by a man of inferior understanding, this Atman cannot be truly known. Even though frequently thought upon, there is no way to know it. O dearest, this Atman cannot be attained by argument. It is truly known only when taught by a wise teacher. O nakiketis, thou hast attained it. Thou art fixed in truth. May we ever find a questioner like thee. I know that earthly treasure is transitory, for the eternal can never be obtained by things which are non-eternal. Hence the sacrifice has been performed by me with perishable things, and yet I have attained the eternal. O Nakiketus, thou hast seen the fulfillment of all desires, the basis of the universe, the endless fruit of sacrificial rites, the other shore where there is no fear, that which is praiseworthy, the great and wide support. Yet, being wise, thou hast rejected all with firm resolve. The wise, who by means of the highest meditation on the self knows the Ancient One, difficult to perceive, seated in the innermost recesses, hidden in the cave of the heart, dwelling in the depths of inner being. He who knows that one as God is liberated from the fetters of joy and sorrow. A mortal, having heard and fully grasped this, and having realized through discrimination the subtle self, rejoices because he has obtained that which is the source of all joy. I think the abode of truth is open to Nakiketus. Nakiketus said, that which thou sayest, which is neither virtue nor vice, neither cause nor effect, neither past nor future, but beyond these, tell me that. Death replied, that goal which all the Vedas glorify, which all austerities proclaim, desiring which people practice, a life of continuance service, that goal I tell thee briefly, it is What name can man give to God? How can the infinite be bound by any finite world? All that knowledge and language can express must be finite, since the language itself is finite. Yet it is very difficult for mortals to think or speak of anything without calling it by a definite name. Knowing this, the sages of the Supreme selected the name which stands as the root of all language. The letter A, the mouth even opening, is the mother sound, being the natural sound uttered by every creature when the throat is opened, and no sound can be made without opening the throat. The last letter, spoken by closing the lips, terminates all articulation. As one carries the sound from the throat to the lips, it passes through the sound oo. These three sounds, therefore, cover the whole field of possible articulation. Their combination is called the akshara, or the imperishable word, akshara, the sound Brahman, or the word. God, because it is the most universal name which can be given to the Supreme, hence it must be the word which was in the beginning and corresponds to the logos of Christian theology. It is because of the all-embracing significance of this name that it is used universally in the Vedic scriptures to designate the same absolute. This word is indeed Brahman. This word is indeed the Supreme. He who knows this word obtains whatever he desires. This is the best support. This is the highest support. He who knows this support is glorified in the world of Brahman. This sacred word is the highest symbol of the Absolute. He who through meditation upon it will grasp its full significance and realize the glory of God, and at once all his desires shall be satisfied, because God is the fulfiller of all desire. This self is never born, nor does it die. It did not spring from anything, nor did anything spring from it. This ancient one is unborn, eternal, everlasting. It is not slain, even though the body itself is slain. If the slayer thinks that he slays, or if the slain thinks that he is slain, both of these know not. For it is neither slays, nor is it slain. The self is subtler than the subtle, greater than the great. It dwells in the heart of each living being. He who is free from desire and free from grief, with mind and senses tranquil, beholds the glory of the Atman. Though sitting, it travels far. Though lying, it goes everywhere. Who else save me is fit to know that God who is both joyful and joyless? The self is all-pervading. The wise who know the self, bodiless, seated within perishable bodies, great and all-pervading, grieve not. The self cannot be obtained by study of the scriptures, nor by intellectual perception, nor by frequent hearing of it. He whom the self chooses, by him alone is it attained. To him the self reveals its true nature. He who has not turned away from evil conduct, whose senses are uncontrolled, who is not tranquil, whose mind is not at rest, he can never attain this Atman, even by knowledge. Who then can know where is this mighty self? He, that self, to whom the Brahmins and Kshatriyas are but food and death itself a condiment. There are two who enjoy the fruits of their good deeds in this world, having entered into the cave of the heart, seated there on the highest summit. The knowers of Brahman call them shadow and light. So also they are called by householders who perform 5 fire sacrifices or 3 fire sacrifices. May we be able to learn the fire sacrifice, which is a bridge for those who perform sacrifice. May we also know the one who is the highest imperishable Brahman, for those who desire to cross over to the other shore, which is beyond fear. Know the self as the Lord of the chariot, and the body as the chariot. Know also the intellect to just be the driver, and the mind the reins. The senses are the horses, the sense objects are the roads. When the Atman is united with the body, senses, and mind, then the wise call him the enjoyer. He who is without discrimination and whose mind is always uncontrolled, his senses are unimaginable, like the vicious horses of a driver, unmanageable. But he who is full of discrimination and whose mind is always controlled, his senses are manageable, like the good horses of a driver. He who does not possess discrimination, whose mind is uncontrolled and always impure, he does not reach that goal, but falls again into samsara, the realm of birth and death. But he who possesses right discrimination, whose mind is under control and always pure, he reaches that goal, from which he is not born again. The man who has a discriminative intellect for the driver and a controlled mind for the reins reaches the end of the journey, the highest place of the all-pervading one. Beyond the senses are the objects. Beyond the objects is the mind. Beyond the mind is the intellect. Beyond the intellect is the great Atman. Beyond the great Atman is the unmanifested. Beyond the unmanifested is the Purusha, the cosmic soul. Beyond the cosmic soul, there is nothing. That is the end, and that is the goal. This Atman, self, hidden in all beings, does not shine forth, but it is seen by subtle seers through keen and subtle understanding. A wise man should control speech by mind, mind by intellect, intellect by the great Atman, and that by the peaceful one. Rise, awake, having reached the great ones, illuminated teachers, gain understanding. The path is as sharp as a razor, impassable and difficult to travel, so the wise declare. Knowing that which is soundless, touchless, formless, undecaying, also tasteless, odorless, and eternal, beginningless, endless, and immutable, beyond the unmanifested, knowing that man escapes from the mouth of death. The intelligent man who has heard and repeated the ancient story of Nachiketus told by the ruler Death is glorified in the world of Brahman. He who with devotion recites this highest secret of immortality before an assembly of pious men, or at the time of funeral ceremonies, will gain everlasting reward. He gains everlasting rewards. The self-existent created the senses outgoing. For this reason, man sees the external, but not the inner self. The same wise man, however, desiring immortality, with eyes turned away from the external, sees the self within. In the last chapter, the ruler of death instructed Nachiketus regarding the nature and glory of the self. Now he shows the reason why the self is not seen by the majority. It is because man's mind is constantly drawn outward through the senses, and this prevents his seeing the inner self. But now and then a seeker, one wiser than others, goes within and attains the vision of the undying self within. Children, the ignorant, pursue external pleasures. Thus they fall into widespread snares of death. But the wise, knowing the nature of immortality, do not seek the permanent among fleeting things. That by which one knows form, taste, smell, sound, touch, and sense enjoyments, by that also one knows whatever remains to be known. This verily is that. That by which a mortal perceives, both in dream and in waking, by knowing that great all-pervading Atman, the wise man grieves no more. He who knows this Atman, the honey-eater, ever near, as the Lord of the past and future, fears no more. This verily is that. He who sees him seated in the 5 elements, born of tapas, born of water, who, having entered the cave of the heart, abides therein, verily is that. He who knows Aditi, who rises with prana, existent in all the devas, who, having entered into the heart, abides there, and who was born from the elements, this verily is that. The all-seeing fire which exists hidden in the two sticks is well guarded in the womb by the mother. That fire is to be worshipped day after day by seekers of wisdom, as well as by sacrificers. This verily is that. Fire is called all-seeing because its light makes things visible. From whence the sun arises and whither it goes at setting, upon that all the devas depend. No one goes beyond that. This verily is that. By mind alone is this to be realized. There is no difference whatsoever between visible and invisible. He who sees a difference here between them goes from death to death. The self, about the size of a thumb, resides in the middle of the body as the Lord of the past and of the future. He who knows him fears no more. This verily is that. That Purusha, the size of a thumb, is like a light without smoke, Lord of the past and the future. He is the same today and tomorrow. This verily is that. As rainwater falling on the mountain top runs down over the rocks on all sides, he who sees the difference between visible forms runs after them in various directions. O Nachiketus, as pure water poured into pure water becomes one, so also is it with the self of the illumined knower, he who becomes one with the Supreme Self. The city of the unborn, whose knowledge is unchanging, has 11 gates. Thinking on him, man grieves no more, and being freed from ignorance, he attains liberation. This verily is that. He it is who sends the incoming prana upward and throws the outgoing breath downward. Him all senses worship. The adorable Atman seated in the center of the heart. When this Atman, which is seated in the body, goes out from the body, what remains then? This verily is that. No mortal lives by the incoming breath of prana or by the outgoing breath of apana, but he lives by another on which these both depend. O Nachiketus, I shall declare unto thee the secret of the eternal Brahman and what will happen to the self after death. Some jivas, individual souls, enter wombs to be embodied. Others will go into immovable forms, according to their deeds and knowledge. The being who remains awake while all sleep, who grants all desires, that is pure, that is Brahman. That alone is said to be immortal. On that all the world rests. None go beyond that. This verily is that. As fire, though one having entered the world becomes various according to what it burns, so does the self within all living beings, though one become various according to what it enters, it also exists outside. As air, though one having entered the world becomes various according to what it enters, so does the Atman within all living beings, though one become various according to what it enters. It also exists outside. As the sun, the eye of the world, it is not defiled by external impurities seen by the eyes. Thus the one inner self of all living beings is not defiled by the misery of the world, being outside it. Eternal among the changing consciousness of the conscious, who, though one, fulfills the desires of many, the wise who perceive him seated within their self, to them belongs eternal peace, not to others. They, the wise, perceive that indescribable highest bliss, saying, "This is that." How am I to know it? Does it shine by its own light, or does it shine by reflected light? The sun does not shine there, nor does the moon, nor does the stars, nor do these lightnings shine there, much less this fire. When he shines, everything shines after him. By his light all is lighted. This ancient tree has its root above and branches below. That is pure, that is Brahman, that alone is called the immortal. All the worlds rest in that. None go beyond that. This verily is that. Whatever there is in the universe is evolved from prana and vibrates in prana. That is a mighty terror, like an upraised thunderbolt. They who know that become immortal. From fear of him the fire burns. From fear of him the sun shines. From fear of him Indra and Vayu and death, the fifth, speed forth. If man is not able to know him before the dissolution of the body, then he becomes embodied again within the created worlds. Knowing that the senses are distinct from the Atman and their rising and setting apart, a wise man grieves no more. Higher than the senses is the mind. Higher than the mind is the intellect. Higher than the intellect is the Atman. Higher than the Atman is the unmanifested. Beyond the unmanifested is the all-pervading and imperceptible being, Purusha. By knowing him, the mortal is liberated and will attain immortality. His form is not to be seen. No one can see him with the eye. He is perceived by the heart, by the intellect, and by the mind. They who know this become immortal. When the five organs of perception become still, together with the mind, and the intellect ceases to be active, this is called the highest state. This firm holding back of the senses is what is known as yoga. Then one should become watchful, for yoga will come and go. Yoga literally means to join or unite the lower self with the higher self, the object with the subject, the worshipper united with God. In order to gain this union, however, one must first disunite oneself from all that scatters the physical, mental, and intellectual forces. So the outgoing perceptions must be detached from the external world and indrawn. He cannot be attained by speech, by mind, or by the eye. How can that be realized except by him who says, quote, "He is"? He should be realized as he is, and also as the reality of both, visible and invisible. He who knows him as he is, to him alone his real nature will be revealed. When all desires dwelling in the heart cease, then the mortal becomes immortal and attains Brahman here. When all the ties of the heart are cut asunder here, then the mortal becomes immortal. Such is the teaching. There are 101 nerves of the heart. One of them penetrates the center of the head. Going upward through it, one attains immortality. The other nerves lead in departing to different worlds. The inner self, about the size of a thumb, is seated in the heart of every living being. With perseverance, man should draw him out from his body as one draws the inner stalk from a blade of grass. One should know him as pure and deathless. Thus, Nachiketus, having acquired this wisdom taught by the ruler of death, together with all the rulers of yoga, becomes free from impurity and death and attains the supreme. So also will it be with another who likewise knows the nature of the self. Peace chant. May He, the Supreme Being, protect us both. May He be pleased with us. May we acquire strength. May our study bring us illumination. May there be no enmity among us. Peace, peace, peace. Here ends this Upanishad. Kena Upanishad. Peace chant. May my limbs, speech, prana, sight, hearing, strength, and all my senses gain in vigor. All is the Brahman, the Supreme Lord of the Upanishads. May I never deny the Brahman. May the Brahman never deny me. May there be no denial of the Brahman. May there be no separation from the Brahman. May all the virtues declared in the sacred Upanishads be manifest in me. Who am devoted to the higher self, may they be manifest in me. Peace, peace, peace. By whom commanded and directed does the mind go towards its objects? Commanded by whom does the life force, the first cause, move? At whose will do men utter speech? What power directs the eye and the ear? It is the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, the speech of the speech, the life of the life, the eye of the eye. The wise, freed from the senses and from mortal desires, after leaving this world, become immortal. There the eye does not go, nor speech, nor mind. We do not know that. We do not understand how it can be taught. It is distinct from the known, and also it is beyond the unknown. Thus we have heard from the ancient teachers who told us about it. That which speech does not illumine, but which illumines speech, know that alone to be the Brahman, not this which people worship here. That which cannot be thought by the mind, but by which, they say, mind is able to think, know that alone to be the Brahman, not this which people worship here. That which is not seen by the eye, but by which the eye is able to see, know that alone to be the Brahman, not this which people worship here. That which cannot be heard by the ear, but by which the ear is able to hear, know that alone to be Brahman, not this which people worship here. That which none breathes with the breath, by which breath is inbreathed, know that alone to be the Brahman, not this which people worship here. If thou thinkest I know it well, then it is certain that thou knowest but little of the absolute truth, or in what form he resideth in the minor aspects of deity, Davis. Therefore, I think that which thou thinkest to be known is still to be sought after. The disciple said, I do not think I know it well, nor do I think that I do not know it well. He among us who knows it truly knows what it is meant by, I know, and also what is meant by, I know it not. He who thinks he knows it not knows it. He who thinks he knows it knows it. The true knower thinks they can never know it because of its infinitude, while the ignorant think they know it. By this text, the teacher confirms the idea that Brahman is unthinkable because the unconditioned. It, Brahman, is known when it is known in every state of consciousness. Through such knowledge, one attains immortality. By attaining this self, man gains strength, and by self-knowledge, immortality is achieved. If one knows it here, that is truth. If one knows it not here, then great is his loss. The wise, seeing the same self in all beings, being liberated from this world, become immortal. The Brahmin once won a victory for the Davis. Through that victory of the Brahmin, the Davis became elated. They thought, this victory is ours, this glory is ours. The Brahmin perceived this and appeared before them. They did not know what mysterious form it was. They said to fire, all-knowing, find out what mysterious spirit this is. He said, yes. He ran toward it and said, he, Brahman, said to him, who art thou? I am Agni. The fire god replied. Brahman asked, what power resides in thee? Agni, the fire god, replied, I can burn up all, whatsoever exists on earth. Brahman placed a straw before him and said, burn this. Agni rushed towards it with all speed, but was not able to burn it. So he returned from there and said to the Davis, I was not able to find out what this great mystery is. Then they said to Vayu, the air god, Vayu, find out what this mystery is. He said, yes. He ran towards it and said, Brahman, who art thou? He answered, I am Vayu. I am the traveler of heaven. Then the Brahman said, what power is in thee? Vayu replied, I can blow away all whatsoever exists on the earth. Brahman placed a straw before him and said, blow this away. Vayu rushed towards it with all speed, but he was not able to blow it away. So he returned from there and said to the Davis, I was not able to find out what great mystery this is. Then they said to Indra, O worshipful one, find out what this mystery is. He said yes and ran towards it. Then he saw in that very space a woman beautifully adorned, Uma of golden hue, daughter of the Himalaya. He asked her, what is this great mystery? She, Uma, said, it is Brahman. It is through the victory of Brahman that ye are victorious. Then from her words, Indra knew that the mysterious form was Brahman. Therefore, these devas, Agni, Vayu, and Indra, excel other devas, because they came nearer to Brahman. It was they who first knew this spirit as Brahman. Therefore, Indra excels all other devas, because he came nearest to Brahman, and because he first, before all others, knew this spirit as Brahman. Thus, the teaching of Brahman is here illustrated in regards to the Davis. He dashed like lightning, and appeared and disappeared just as the eye can wink. Next, the teaching is regarding the embodied soul. The mind seemed to approach him, Brahman, but the mind, the seeker, again and again remembers and thinks about Brahman. That Brahman is called Tadvanam, the object of adoration. He is to be worshipped among the name Tadvanam. He who knows Brahman thus is loved by all beings. God partakes of all his lovable qualities and is therefore loved by all true devotees. The disciple asked, "O Master, teach me the Upanishad." The Master replied, "The Upanishad has been taught thee. We have certainly taught thee the Upanishad about Brahman. The Upanishad is based on tapas. Practice the control of the body, mind, and senses. Dhamma, the subjugation of the senses. Karma, the right performance of prescribed actions. The Vedas are its limbs. Truth is its support. He who knows this wisdom of the Upanishad, having been cleansed of all sin, becomes established in the blissful, eternal, and highest abode of Brahman, in the highest abode of Brahman." Here ends the Upanishads.